These are the Paget messages, Life After Death, Part 4. The materialist accepts these phenomena as true and blindly and with full assurance announces that nothing in creation is ever lost or annihilated. This being true, why is it not the conclusion logical that the apparently inanimate rock or the animal without reasoning powers or the man with the reasonable faculties is never annihilated or lost, or in other words, never dies the death that results in nothingness? But they say, while this may be true, yet the materials which form these various aspects of existence do not necessarily or probably come together again and reform the identical being that once appeared as an existing thing and then dissolved into the elements that compose the thing. And hence, while the elements in some that may continue to live forever, yet that form in which they once existed will not again appear. I know that this is a reasonable conclusion and one in accord with the demonstrations of science and is applicable to the merely physical man just as to any other manifestations of the material things of nature. But even these materialists admit that in the case of man there is something in his formation and essential being that is more than or in addition to the merely physical portions of him. And while they may say that this something is wholly of a material nature, yet they admit that it is of a material different and distinct from the material that forms the visible physical body. I do not speak of the soul and or spiritual part of man, but of the intellect and of the five senses and of the reasoning powers, all which, of course, includes the memory. That part of man that embraces these things, the materialist must admit, is distinct and different from the mere body, and even though it were here to be conceded that they are material, yet no man has ever seen them or felt them or in any way perceived their existence as he has that which he knows to be of the material. He has seen and heard and known the effects of the existence of these invisible material qualities, as he may call them, but has never demonstrated that they died when the physical body died. The furthest that he can go in this direction is that they disappeared and became lost to his consciousness. But that they disintegrated or dissolved or were reduced to a gaseous substance or thin air in which he has seen the physical body disappear, he cannot affirm. The limit of his knowledge is that with the death of the physical body, this other, as he terms it, material part of man disappears and never again reappears to his physical senses. While, as I say, he has never observed and has no knowledge of any disintegration of these physical material parts of man into any primary elements or atoms or electrons as he applies such terminology to the physical body, and hence he is not justified in concluding that any such results to this invisible material follows the death and dissolving of the flesh and blood and bones of man. To so conclude is more of a speculation than to hold that the invisible material did not dissolve into forms more invisible, if such an expression can be used. As I have said, life is in all things visible and invisible, and there is no vacuum in nature. While man is living, it is demonstrated that life is in this invisible part of man, and more abundantly that in the merely visible body. And as life continues after death in the elements of this latter body, why cannot we declare that after death life continues in the invisible part of man? Nothing is ever lost or annihilated, and hence these parts of man cannot be annihilated, and existing they must contain life. Has the materialist ever been able to demonstrate to his own satisfaction even that this invisible part of man, which he says is material, ceases to live? He cannot say that the elements of the physical body, no matter what form they may assume, cease to live, but on the contrary, affirmatively asserts that they are never annihilated and continue to exist. And as life is necessary to existence, they must continue to have life. So according to their own arguments and demonstrations and ultimate claims, the death of the physical body does not destroy the elements which compose that body, but only the form in which these elements were combined. Then, from this the most that they can claim to the invisible material part of man is that while the material which composed this part is not dead or annihilated, yet their formation may be disintegrated or changed, and hence the identity of the man as to this portion of him no longer exists. But this conclusion does not follow as a logical sequence, and the materialist has nothing upon which to base this conclusion except that he has seen and knows that when the visible body dies, it disintegrates and ultimately disappears. He has never seen the disintegration of this invisible part of man, though he has seen its manifestations decay and even destroyed. But the cause of this is shown to be some decadence or disorganization of some part of the visible body through which the invisible manifested. These materialists have knowledge of the facts that men have been deprived of their arms or legs or other parts of the body, and yet the invisible parts remained perfect, performing their functions. Also, it is true that men have received injury to their physical organs of sight or hearing, and as a consequence, the invisible organs of sight or hearing did not function. But that fact constitutes no proof that they were dead or had ceased to preserve the form they had before the physical organs were impaired, or when the defects of the physical organs were removed and these organs again came into condition to do their functioning. The physical faculties of sight and hearing manifested their existence again, just as it existed before the physical organs were impaired. And so many similar instances might be referred to show that death or destruction of any or many parts of the physical body, visible body, does not destroy or disseminate into its elements the invisible material parts of man. And besides, let the materialist consider the great difference in the powers and objects of the creation of these visible and invisible parts of man, and they will realize that the purely physical is wholly subordinated and used merely to enable the invisible parts to manifest themselves and show that the real man is the invisible part, and that man cannot lose part of his physical vestment and yet exist and perform his functions and exercise his powers. I have thus tried to show that while no argument can be drawn from any analogy between the vegetable things of nature dying and coming to life again and man's dying, yet neither can any argument be drawn from the fact that the visible body of man dies and goes into its elements, never to be resuscitated again as the same body, to show that the invisible body of man dies and is dissolved into its elements, and that man ceases to be the individual that he was before the death of the physical body. I may not have made my message as plain and convincing as I would desire, but in discussions of this kind it is difficult to transmit the various shades of thought through the medium of a mortal. I thank you for your courtesy and will stop now. So with all my love and the blessings of the Father, I will say good night. Your brother in Christ, Samuel. The next message is from Abraham Lincoln. These are the Paget messages channeled by Jesus and his disciples 100 years ago, and they're available at Amazon.com and free PDFs at divinelove.org.